It's a sprint to the finish line in the final days of the 2020 race for president. It's the Friday before Election Day, and so far, a record number of more than 80 million voters have already cast their ballots through early voting. President Trump and former Vice President Joe Biden are going all out to convince those remaining undecided voters to cast ballots for them. Both have been hitting the campaign trail in key swing states, in addition to spending millions in television ads in an attempt to gain votes. Joining me to discuss the last full week of Campaign 2020 and what we can expect on Election Day are political consultants Tony Signoli and Paul Robbins.
Obviously, with this many people having voted already, it would seem that the demographics, the geography of where these folks are voting would seem to favor Joe Biden, very much so. So all that energy out there is a good thing for Joe Biden, all that early voting.
Paul, how about your assessment? Where do you think the race stands now in terms of Joe Biden's chances and President Trump's chances?
I agree with Tony, but here's a caveat. The early voting favors registration towards the Democrats. The voting that is on Election Day will likely favor the Republicans, and the in-person voting that started just a couple days ago in Florida is clearly helping the Republicans. So I look at this race and say Biden has a significant lead. He's ahead in the battleground states. Is it possible for Trump to run that trifecta of those Rust Belt states? And the truth is, it's possible. The problem he has is he's not growing his base. He decided at the very beginning, I'm going to stick with my base. It's how I won, and it's how I can win again. Typically, candidates for re-election try to, actually, right after they're elected, they try to expand their base. He's trying to increase the amount of participation of people who like him, who never vote, which has really never been done before. But we're going to see this experiment if he's able to get that amount of folks out.
Now, at this point, 4 years ago, when Hillary Clinton ran against Donald Trump, as I recall, those last few days before the election, Hillary's support was starting to collapse. The gap there was certainly narrowing. She was leading in the polls, but it was narrowing. Is there any kind of erosion of Joe Biden's support, his poll numbers at this point? Do you see any kind of diversion of support going to Trump as it did in 2016?
Not right now, Ray. What we're seeing is actually the opposite. Biden seems to be accelerating at the time that he needs to. You've brought up a great point, though. At this time, Hillary Clinton was starting to have an erosion. There were people who were undecided, who at that moment of indecision were deciding, I just don't like her enough to do this, and what the heck? Let me take the shot on the reality show here. I think that that's a little different this time around. The other aspect of this, Ray, is that unlike 2016, a lot of what Donald Trump has thrown as his opponent hasn't stuck to Joe Biden. Some of it's just been so unbelievable that people just, unlike with Hillary Clinton, those attacks, those Sleepy Joe commentaries, etc., it's just not making a difference. And perhaps true for another reason. There are a lot of people in the electorate that are taking this a lot more seriously than just another presidential race. When you've got a pandemic, when you've got the economic crisis that's coming along with this right now, despite what the GDP looks like in the last few days, these are all heavier things on people's minds. It's not a throwaway vote this time around.
Ray, I would just add to what Tony said is everyone's wringing their hands about polling and pollsters, but the reality is that Clinton won the national popular vote by exactly the amount that the last polls had her up by about 2 to 3 points. She won by 3 points. There was very much underpolling in those three battleground Rust Belt states. She was not well liked. We have this thing we call rainmakers. When it rains, certain people don't come out because there's soft support. It's raining, I'm not going to go out. The rainmaker for Clinton was that people didn't like her and enough to overperform, and Trump overperformed. So it's really hard to overcome those polling numbers. But again, we're talking about 50 different elections in 50 different states. So that's how there's a disconnect for people when they look at the polls. And those three states are still, except for Wisconsin, still relatively close too.
Now, yesterday we saw the highest number of COVID cases in the United States since the pandemic began, the highest number. This seems to be getting worse in terms of better, although in President Trump's campaigning, he's saying we're rounding the corner. Gentlemen, what do you make of this record number of COVID cases, and how devastating is that going to be to the president's chances come Tuesday?
Yeah, Ray, something really interesting. Lay down the largest spikes and you're going to lay down the battleground states. And
Exactly.
you're going to see a correlation. So if Tony and I were on the other side, right, we would be pulling our hair out right now, looking at
Right.
Ohio. The governor just came on the air and said we're at a crisis point in Ohio. This is out of control. Wisconsin. It's interesting. Wisconsin, run by Republicans, has a huge amount of spike. Next door in Michigan, where the Trumpers are mad at Whitmer, the numbers aren't as great because she's kept those numbers down. So you don't want to go into the election day with the issue that hurts you the most, that helps your opponent, being the issue that people are thinking about. Trump was hoping that this spike would go down. This is an incredible spike. And if you lay the battleground states next to it, it's really a nightmare scenario if you're working on that team.
Tony, how solid are Joe Biden's chances in the so-called swing states now? Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, even Florida, North Carolina. Where do you see support standing at this point? Is Donald Trump gaining in some of those key swing states?
It's interesting. It's almost as if the president's team has abdicated some of these states. Take a look at where the candidates will be over the next 3 or 4 days. That can tell you a lot. Certainly, the Trump-Pence team and their surrogates are going to really double down on Florida in a big way right now. That's tight enough where they think they can make a difference there. But if you look at a few of these other states, some that Paul just mentioned, Wisconsin, Michigan, Minnesota in play, and looking to see what Trump has got for ground troops, for surrogates, et cetera. He's weak there. That's another thing that's been unique or a difference between 2016 and this campaign. The Clinton people thought in certain places that they had it sewn up, that they were okay in Michigan and in Pennsylvania. That's not the way Biden and Harris are playing, not at all. Not with their personal visits, not with their surrogates and their allies. And look at the spending. I always love when the election is over and you get to see the final expenditures, what they really spend, those final reports. It will be a brilliant thing to take a look at the Biden campaign buys. And even some other states that, you wouldn't think would be swing state. Watch Texas right now. Ted Cruz is telling the president, I think there's a problem here. In the same way the Biden people are hearing, hey, there might be an opportunity. This may be more purple than we thought. And what just happened in the last 48 hours? The Biden folks started spending money where they had not before. Fort Worth, Dallas, that market, et cetera. So there's a lot that's still in play here. But certainly it's not the same battleground states that Donald Trump had to deal with the last time, especially you look at the few that he won by less than 1%.
Paul, you touched on this earlier, and that is the record turnout so far. In fact, in Texas, right now, more people have voted in early voting than they did in the whole election 4 years ago in 2016. What does that tell you about the possibility of perhaps Joe Biden carrying Texas? Is that possible at this point?
I would throw in Georgia too. I think those states have been trending younger, more diverse, more people of color, first-time voters. Those are tending to tilt towards the Democrats. I would say it's still a steep climb in Texas, but you have people, more votes, as you just said, than were in all of the last election cycle. That tells you there's a real opportunity there. The one I'm looking at, though, Ray and Tony, is Georgia, because Georgia keeps getting closer and closer, and there's a lot of early voting there as well. And they report early in the evening. So if Georgia's super close or Biden wins, obviously it's over if he wins Georgia. So yeah, those two states, we could be seeing a redrawing of the map going forward.
Tony,
I did hear that. I'm sorry, Ray.
Go ahead, Tony. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I'm glad that Paul brought that up because we're starting to see in the last 48 hours, others are paying attention to Georgia. But Paul's ahead of the curve. You watch in the next 12, 24, 36 hours of the news cycles, folks may start to talk about Georgia even more so. So Paul said it here first, which is good. But I'll throw out one other thing. In Georgia, folks are angry. They're angry at the sitting governor. They're angry at the last governor's race. You've got Stacey Abrams out there on the ground reminding folks, remember what happened just 2 years ago. Come on, we got to get out there. We got to get fired up. It is, literally, folks in Georgia are turning out to vote as their lives depended on it.
I would add one thing. There might be reverse coattails because you have two Senate candidates on the Democratic side who are running extraordinarily good campaigns, bringing voters out to vote for them, who may then go up the ticket and click on the Biden.
And Tony, speaking of the Senate, what are the chances, what are the odds the Democrats might regain control of the Senate? The latest polls indicate that perhaps they might gain 4 to 6 seats, but is that going to be enough to regain control of the Senate?
It's tougher. It's more of a local campaign for folks in those states right now. I mean, to see a flip in South Carolina would be stunning, absolutely stunning. But the key piece, Democrats have been able to raise more money than they ever have before in those states. They've got better ground troops put together, organized than ever before. I'm seeing something else too. I'm seeing in some of those states, Ray, different Democratic politicos, different major domos on the ground who normally don't get along. They battle it out, they duke it out amongst themselves over turf and over position. They're coming together, have been coming together months ago in these opportunities to try to win back the United States Senate. I won't be bold enough or have enough courage to prognosticate that the Senate goes Democratic, but it will be an incredible good shot that the Democrats have got. And you got to remember, too, it's one thing to win a majority. You need a little bit more than that for the kind of battles that the United States Senate will see coming up down the road.
Paul, what are your expectations for election night? Are we going to see a winner? There's a lot of controversy as to whether or not ballots will be contested and so forth. But when do you expect we'll see a winner in this race? Will it be Tuesday night?
I'm going to say you can roll the tape, and if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. So in 2016, I said on the same show in March of that year that Donald Trump could win, and here's how he's going to do it. I think it's going to be over early. And I don't think all the extra counting that's going to happen in places like Pennsylvania and Minnesota are going to matter. I think by 11:30, they're going to have a good sense that it's over.
And if it's over that early, who does it favor?
Favors Biden.
Absolutely.
For sure.
Tony,
Absolutely.
how about your predictions about election night? Do you anticipate it being over that quickly, as Paul has indicated?
I think what you're going to see is that vote, that essential vote to get to 260 electoral college votes, 260 points there. I think you're going to see it done and over with. Some of the states that we're seeing so much momentum in right now, it appears that they're moving for Biden, not just because of the polls we're seeing, but because of those folks on the ground that really know what's going on, both Republican and Democrat, who have just got this feeling that that's the game plan. I think Paul's right. We will know a lot earlier than has been predicted. Votes will still be counted. The president, should he lose, will say, gosh, golly, gee whiz, Pennsylvania's not in yet. This isn't done yet. Once you hit that magic number of 270, that's it. And when you get to 280, 283, 287, it's done. There's no way to reverse the math. So I agree totally with Paul. You'll see this earlier than has been predicted or kvetched about by a lot of folks at this point.